Senator Joe Manchin just cannot wait to show the country how eager he is to work with the Republican Party to defeat any effort to provide economic relief to Americans during this pandemic. Now, he has said that he's against beefing up the stimulus checks to $2,000. This is according to a report by the Washington Post. And what he's specifically responding to is what Joe Biden said prior to the Georgia runoff races taking place. Remember, those races were important for the Democratic Party. Those races decided whether the Democrats would take control of the Senate. Now, it would be a very slim majority, of course, with Kamala Harris being the individual who can break a tie between Democrats and Republicans. But nonetheless, Biden made a promise. If you get these Democrats elected, I'm gonna help you out economically. Here's what he had to say.
By electing John and the Reverend, you can make an immediate difference in your own lives, the lives of the people all across this country, because their election will put an end to the block in Washington on that $2,000 stimulus check, that money that will go out the door immediately to help people who are in real trouble. Think about what it will mean to your lives, putting food on the table.
So Biden promised that he would do it. Biden has also made new stimulus checks a central promise, specifically telling Georgia voters that they would be getting $2,000 payments if these Democrats won the Senate elections in the state this week. But Manchin, according to the Washington Post, did not agree with this. In fact, here's what he said specifically. I don't know where the hell $2,000 came from. I swear to God, I don't. That's another $400 billion, pretending as if he's concerned about deficit spending, which is pathetic. Manchin initially seemed to suggest in an interview with the Washington Post that he was absolutely opposed. However, he did say this later, maybe there was a little bit of backlash. How is the money that we invest now going to help us best get jobs back and get people employed? And I can't tell you that sending another check out is gonna do that to a person that's already got a check. Okay, so before I open it up to the panel, people can't work right now. People can't work right now. People can't work right now. Jobs are like, people are shedding jobs. Companies are shedding jobs because this country did not appropriately respond to the coronavirus. We have 4,000 people dying a day now as a result of the inaction by our federal government. And so people have no choice. So if they're forced to stay home, if they've been laid off through no fault of their own, you need to provide them economic relief. It's not that difficult to understand that. Anyway, go ahead, guys.
It's funny. I had to remind myself today that Joe Manchin's the guy whose daughter, while working with, was it Mylan Pharmaceuticals, jacked up the price of EpiPens 600%, and then took a hefty multi-million-dollar bonus off that, and Manchin defended her. That is who Joe Manchin is. Joe Manchin has never done anything for the average working American. I actually sat down earlier today as well, and I did some math because apparently that's what I do now. Joe Manchin represents 1.8 million Americans from West Virginia in the US Senate. The last stimulus check, the first round, 153 million Americans received checks. So this one, the standards were a little bit higher, so more people were eligible. So we're talking about more than 153 million people that were eligible for this latest round of stimulus. And one man is holding up checks for over 153 million Americans, or 47% of the entire country. And it's Joe Manchin. This is no longer having to attack Republicans for obstruction. Joe Manchin is gonna be the target. And we're gonna have to make him the target for pressure for the next at least 2 years.
I mean, look, I would dedicate ads targeted toward his own constituents, calling him out like, you guys are suffering, and the man who's holding up these more robust stimulus checks. I don't even like saying stimulus. They're not stimulus checks. They're relief checks. Let's be clear about what this is. It's just about giving people, even at $2,000, one-time $2,000 check, it's barely even relief. It's crumbs, okay? At a time when so many people, tens of millions of Americans, still unemployed since the beginning of the pandemic. People need help to pay their bills, to put food on the table. We have insanely long lines at food banks. I mean, we've seen so many examples of people who are living in desperation right now. And then you have Joe Manchin making a Republican talking point about how much it would cost to provide relief to Americans in this moment of crisis. I didn't hear the same language coming out of his mouth when it came to pumping bailout money to these major corporations and banks in the beginning of the pandemic. They got trillions of dollars, whereas average Americans, did not get the relief that they needed to avoid absolute financial ruin. So many people owe back rent. A month ago, the average person owing back rent owed about $5,400. That number is clearly much higher now. So, we might have an eviction moratorium, but let's be clear, all of these people who haven't been evicted yet will be evicted if they don't make that one giant payment to their landlords to stay in their units or their homes or wherever they are. All right, so let me give you some more details. Manchin had some other things to say. He clarified also in a follow-up interview that he could potentially support more checks if they were narrow in scope and targeted for people who really need them, which they are targeted toward people who really need them. They're means tested. So these relief checks would go to people who are earning under $75,000 a year. And that's based on their latest tax filing from 2019. It would also start to taper off among people who make more than $75,000, and at $99,000, people who make that amount and more get nothing. It's means tested. So it literally does go toward people who need the relief. And this talking point, again, is something that you're likely to hear from Republican lawmakers. But of course, Joe Manchin, in the way he legislates, is more Republican than Democrat. And he also says if they can direct money and they say this will help stimulate the economy, hell yeah, I'm for it. But basically right now, you better get them vaccinated. So he says, no, we should focus that money on getting people vaccinated, which I agree with that. I also agree with providing economic relief to people. So Frederick, do you have any thoughts on Manchin's statement?
Yeah, I mean, this just shows how out of touch and classist much of the party is, right? There's been a lot of conversation. I think AOC said it best, and if I remember correctly, it was in reference to Joe Biden, that in most other countries, they wouldn't be a part of the same party. And Joe Manchin is the living embodiment of that. I'm not sure in what world $2,000 or $4,000, $1,200, $600 would be significant for people who are struggling. The average rent and mortgage nationwide is about $2,000, meaning that a relief check being given covers your rent, covers your mortgage potentially. And then what are you doing about food? What are you doing about your light bill, so on and so forth? And frankly, as you said, they're acting as if, or he's acting as if everyone got a check. They're already, the checks go to people who need it most, right? And frankly, not even because a lot of people still needed them and didn't receive them at this point. So, I don't have much to say other than the fact that people like Joe Manchin are a virus in the party and need to be held accountable.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I really do think that there needs to be more pressure applied by Democrats toward Joe Manchin, because he's already committed himself to becoming a giant obstacle for the Democratic Party anytime they want to pass bold policy. And in this case, we're not even talking about bold policy, guys. We're just talking about the bare minimum, a one-time $2,000 check to people who desperately need it. And I mean, I've been clear on means testing in the past. I'm gonna say it again. I don't even agree with means testing in this moment, because means testing implies that there's gonna be a delay in people getting the relief they need. Just send out the checks. And if someone has been working during this pandemic and didn't actually need it, then take care of it when they file their taxes. Make sure they pay that money back to the federal government when they file their taxes. Done. But right now, people need relief. People are desperate. And we're having these ridiculous conversations about like, oh, it costs too much money, deficit spending. Again, I mean, it's just a double standard depending on who we're talking about, right? Like if we're talking about the banks and liquidity and making sure they have cash that they can loan out, we're gonna go ahead and pump the banks with as much money as possible. When it comes to corporations, the Federal Reserve decided to do the same with corporations as well during this pandemic. And what did they do? I mean, we're seeing it reflected in the stock market right now. It was just reported today that the country lost 140,000 jobs over the last week. You look at the stock market is buzzing. They're doing real well, okay? And that disconnect is because of the financial policies that are implemented by the Federal Reserve and our members of Congress.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.